Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. The first year of retirement always feels the most volatile. Dallas.
Thanks, Michael. Quick story here. Really interesting conversation I had with clients the other day, which of course, like everything, then made me to think of this in a conceptual, broad way. But so I've got these clients who we worked together for, I think, say 3-4 years now. They recently sold their cattle property and retired. And so that, they probably, I think, 3 to 6 months ago this happened. And so sold the property, we put some money into superannuation, then it was sort of one of those things where, like a lot of our retirement plans, we had we have two buckets of money, which was, okay, we've got this money that's gone into superannuation and moved into pension accounts. It's invested 100% in Australian and overseas companies. It's designed to grow long term. Now these guys are in a pretty good position, so they can actually hold a fair cash buffer outside in their own name. So they had they've got a fairly substantial cash buffer there, which is basically 5 years worth of their income needs just sitting there in cash. So. And this was the conversation was around, we've got this money in super. We really just want to focus on that growing for the long term. We've got this money here in cash. If we have when we have our next big drop in company prices, we have our next GFC or COVID event or whatever happens where company prices drop by 30% or more, what we'll do is we'll just draw your income out of the cash portion for 5 years. And so what was really interesting was I had a phone call from them the other day, and they sort of said, "Oh, we just wanted to talk about our super balance." I was going, "Okay," and I looked at it, and so what they had put in to super from the lump sum that had gone in 6 months ago, their balance was down somewhere in the range of 5%, and it sort of probably came across as a bit arrogant until I sort of dug a bit deeper. But I was going, so what do you mean? What's the problem? Like what can you? And so we just jumped online and we've logged in and we can, what's happened? And we were going, and I was going, what do you mean? Like what's going on? Because you and I know, and we've talked about this in great detail, that not only is volatility of a 10%, 20%, 30% rise or fall completely par for the course in any 1 year, but a 5% change in valuation is a sneeze. Like it's nothing. It's nothing. It's a couple of good or bad days. It's really nothing in the big scheme of things. And it was what I found interesting about it though was so then, and of course it's one of those things where when we then unpack that most of the time, it's a thing where I realised that. And I've sort of gone, and that was a bit I couldn't work out. I went, you guys have been clients for 4 years. Like you've seen, not only have you seen these, day-to-day fluctuations, we've had our reviews where I've gone, your balance is slightly higher, slightly lower, whatever. They've also been invested the whole way through COVID. So they saw 2 years ago, they saw a drop of 37% in 30 days. They then saw a rebound of all of that plus more over the course of the next 6 months. They've lived through and seen way more volatility than this. And this was where I was a bit confused, because going, this is not like this isn't even the 37% drop. Like we've talked about that. We know that's coming. We know that is going to be. That's why we've got the cash there. That was the conversation. Normally these kinds of conversations are around, yes, I understand your balance has dropped very substantially. It's stressful. It probably doesn't feel nice, but remember the plan. So let's stick to the plan. That's why we've got the cash there. We draw from that for a year or two, let things recover, see how things are playing out. we weren't even at that stage. We weren't at draw from the cash stage. We weren't even close to that. We were just at your balance is slightly lower than what it was 3 to 6 months ago. And what it got me thinking about, I couldn't, it took a little while to work out, but I then saw it, when I looked for it, I saw it everywhere. Pretty much all of my clients that have retired, they all say some variation of the fact that in that first year, they mention something about, geez, it's just been so volatile since we've been retired. It's just, the balance has gone up and gone down. And we're looking at it going, no, it hasn't been.
It's normal.
It's completely normal. It's not only is it normal by our standards, but if you've been a client for 5 years or 6 years or 4 years in this case, it's normal by their standards. This is all volatility that these clients have already experienced. And what it is that it's not salient, it's not important, it's not front of mind to them until retirement. And then it's really front of mind. And again, this is one of those things, this makes complete sense when you think of it this way. And that's where I think it's reframed how I'm having these conversations now or how I will be having conversations about this with people in the years leading up to retirement, is that first year of retirement. You notice that I didn't say the first year of retirement is always the most volatile.
No.
Because that wouldn't be, because everyone retires at different times. It can't be true. But it definitely would always feel the most volatile for people. I completely understand that.
I think I know what's going on here.
What is it?
So, retirement is this. You and I know the day that someone retires is such an arbitrary line in the sand.
We draw a big line and you draw a dot there and go, that's the retirement date. It doesn't matter.
It means nothing other than you now stop getting dressed and going to work. As we've always said, let's hope you still get dressed. You've now stopped getting dressed and going to work. Your money, conceptualize your money getting dressed, going to work, even though it's been getting dressed and going to work a long time before that.
Yep.
It's now spitting out an income for you. So that date of retirement is an arbitrary line in the sand. I think I know what's going on here. People always say to me, and I've heard this for over 20 years, the common question that's always phrased this way is, what if there is another global financial crisis the day that I retire?
Yes.
It's not the year that I retire.
That's exactly
it's the day that I retire.
Yep.
That doesn't mean anything, and you go through that. Yep. So that's on the way to retirement.
Yes.
There's this conceptual finish line. That's not actually a finish line. It's more like the 25-meter mark of a 100-meter race.
Yes.
But there's this arbitrary line in the sand, this finish line.
Yep.
And then the day after, there's a new starting point.
Yes.
There's a new artificial high water mark.
Yep.
That artificial high water mark, I think, is the starting balance that someone starts with on the day that they retire.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think.
So whether it's 1.5 million or 2 million or 2.5 million, that's the new high water mark, and that's the base level that everything will be measured against in the future, as opposed to, hey, 10 years ago I only had $400,000, and gee, I've done a good job, and I've received good advice, and I've done the hard work of actually funding my retirement plan.
Yeah.
And my $400,000 has turned into $1.7 million. That's long forgotten.
Yeah. We're not marking ourselves against 400.
My new thing is that I have $1.7 million.
Yeah. That's
dropped by 5%.
Yes.
And in dollar terms, it feels like I've lost $85,000.
Yep. Yep. And that's the other part of it, is that very interesting where percentages, and by its nature as well, normally when you have the most amount of money that you've ever had is the day that you retire. And so those percentage drops, like when I'm going, it's a 5% drop. It's nothing. It's nothing relative to, but a 5, if you've got 3 times more money than you had when you became a client, it only has to drop a third as much by a percentage basis.
It seems magnified.
To lose the same amount of, and I say lose with air quotes here. Yeah. So I think there's a heap of things to unpack here now that I think about it. You're right. I guess I fully agree that that language is the key there. Is when people say, what if the day we retire, we haven't, and because people invariably say some variation of, Murphy's Law is that it'll be the day that I retire.
The day that I retire.
Yeah. And you're right. No one ever says, what if 3 years after I retire? Or, what if 13 years after I retire? Or
No one even says to me, what if the year that I retired, there was a drop? It's the day.
Yeah.
It's the day that I retired. That's the finish line, and the next day is the start of the rest of that person's life.
Yes.
I can understand this.
Yep.
It's good that we're talking about this because this is something the listeners should be aware of.
Yeah.
These are all things that, I mean, no one has, this is a subconscious thing, obviously.
Yeah.
No one, unless there was a study done on this, no one can say for sure that's what's going on.
Yep.
I think from all the reps that we've done with all of our clients over many years, that's what it appears to be for me.
Yeah.
When we unpack it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing is you go like that was, say in this example, it wasn't like this was a 3-hour conversation about the concept of, it was once we got on the phone about, no, that's 5%. That's just don't worry about that. Like these guys, they're intelligent people. They're really easy to deal with. They kind of, okay, don't worry about it. Okay, great. We won't worry about it. It was just that it was interesting to me that it was such a small amount that. So we'd done the reps. We'd already done the work. We'd done the training effectively to go, hey, you are going to experience this volatility. They just needed a reminder at that point in time. It was just interesting that the reminder was required at a 5% drop, it wasn't a 30% drop that it took to trigger that. There's a few things that I think are interesting there. I think you're right where I say it's like, so we know that with our clients, for example, and these clients, the way that they were invested, the way that their superannuation and pension accounts were invested leading up to retirement is exactly the same as the way that it is invested in retirement. There's no, it's not a different thing. It's the same thing. The same way that balance rose or fall, or the behavior of that asset class they're invested in, it's the same thing. The behavior is the same. I think there is a component where people think that at retirement, particularly when you change, for example, if you're going from, I'm going to move from superannuation into a pension account, even the language around that, I think that's why we talk about a super income stream rather than a pension account often, is that it's not like I did have this money that I was growing and working and it was getting dressed and going to work for me and it was trying to build up that balance. Now I'm trying to crystallize that at this point in time and draw a line in the sand here, and that's the amount of dollars that I have, and I need that amount forever. It's just like as you say, it's a dot on the line of all these things. And so I think there is a thing where it probably feels like I'm now invested in a different thing, or this should behave differently to how it behaved. And that's what, like I said, is interesting because people who have been clients for a few years, they've seen a lot of volatility. So while they're working, they've seen a lot of volatility. They know that does occur. They're quite comfortable with that. It feels different when they are retired. And the other point I think I make here is if you, the word that springs to mind is extrapolation. And so what happens is, and this is, we've talked about this before with the human condition, is that we look at a cloud and we don't just say, oh, that's an amorphous blob. We see a rabbit, or we see we see some shape. If you retire with, as you say, whether it's 1.5 or 2.5 or a million, whatever that figure is, that becomes the new high water mark, and that's what you're marking things from. If that $1 million drops to 900,000, our mind extrapolates, because we don't go, I did have 300,000 and then I had $1 million and now it's dropped to 900. So I'll draw the line from 300 to 900 and go, oh, geez, my retirement savings have tripled over the last 12 years. We reset the line and we draw it from $1 million to 900,000, and then in our mind we continue to draw the straight line through that until zero. And I think that's sort of what happens there. Is it's like if this keeps going on for the next however many years, my balance will go to zero. Now, we've talked about why that isn't the case and why not, but that's the human condition. I think that's part of the way that we sort of see things. Yeah,
look, certainly agreed. And not forgetting too, as things progressively head south for the short term, and we know that conceptually that it's always the short term, you've got the media banging the drum saying this is going to get much, much, much worse.
Yes.
And get out now. Cut your losses. Get out now. So if you're a consumer of media,
yes,
then you have that.
If you're a consumer of media, my response would be don't consume media. Don't consume media. Turn off the news. There's a. It is interesting because it's in the first year of retirement. It's often you never see a news headline that goes, "Geez, how good's this?" Company prices have gone up by 30% in the year that you know. People only see that. That's only visible once people come in for that first review meeting after they have retired. So if they have retired and company prices have gone up substantially over that first 6 to 12 months, they're only aware of that normally after we bring it to their attention. And there's still some. And now that I say this, there's like almost a nervousness of how's my balance looking? Well, you had 1.4 and you've pulled $70,000 out, and now you've got 1.5. Oh, really? You sure? It's we go, no, that's it's company prices have gone up. That's never, because it's not in the news. It's not a part of our normal day-to-day discussions with people. That's not visible. It's not noticeable. Whereas, like for these guys the other day, this conversation was had in the middle of the Russia and Ukraine war, and I'm sure that if they've probably got more time on their hands than they ever have to actually pay attention to current affairs. They're following along. There's this war happening. They've seen a couple of days where company prices have dropped by 2%, and there's the big red ink on the news screen, and they're going, what's happened? And so I'm looking at that from my perspective, going, nothing's happened. It's a sneeze. And they're looking at it from their perspective, which is that, a couple of things, that extrapolation of, well, we had this much and now it's gone down a bit, and if it keeps going down, it's going to go to zero. And there's this war on, and there's, like I've seen the guy on the TV, he looked very concerned. He had a very concerned look on his face as he was talking about these company prices dropping. So there's, I guess, like a lot of these things where we're talking about an experience or feelings, it's not to say you shouldn't feel this. And that was the point of the conversation with these guys. I didn't say you shouldn't feel that way. I said you must not pay attention to that. You have to just tune that out. Don't try and fight your feelings on this. Just look away, basically, is the only way. Like, we're all human beings. We can't help those feelings. We can't help doing those things. The only real response is to not get caught up in that, not get caught in that loop.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And it's practical measures to help you with those things, akin to not having junk food in the fridge. Yes. You can't eat it if it's not there.
Yep. Don't look at your balance.
If you don't look at your balance.
Yep.
And I've always said people continually, even when they're approaching retirement or long away from retirement, people that look at their balance tend to set artificially high watermarks all the time.
Yes,
and
they do.
We know that companies grow faster than they should at times and drop faster than they should at times. Now, the problem is when they grow faster than they should at times, if you're continually logging in every single day and setting artificially high watermarks, then you're really, really susceptible to noticing those 5% drops down from that. A 5% drop down can be a 5% gain to someone that hasn't looked at it for a while.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about there,
all the time.
I don't look at it.
Yeah.
It rises 10%.
Yeah.
It falls 5%.
Yeah.
Now, if I haven't looked at it, I've made 5%. I feel like I've made 5%.
Yeah. 100%.
If I look at it every day, I feel like I've lost 5%.
Yeah. There's an interesting thing here. This number is made up, but there's when you look at the numbers of, so talk about all-time highs of company prices and of average company prices. What's the percentage of time that you think prices are below all-time highs? So when you think about that as a line on a graph, and we know there's some squiggles, but it's trending upwards. what percentage of the time do you think we would be at a new all-time high?
At a new all-time high?
Yeah. Like at the top of it,
Yeah, no.
You would probably go, there's some squiggles in there, but we'd probably spend half the time at a new all-time high.
Yep.
It's something like 95% of your investing life is spent below the all-time high.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so if you're looking at it all the time, which you mean you're disappointed.
Yes.
Like you're setting artificially high watermarks and it's dropping down.
We've talked about this before. What actually happens is there's a small drop, and then it'll sort of flatten out for a bit. And then prices will rip upwards by 20 or 30%. And so it might only be 3 to 6 months for prices to go up by 20% and blast through into this new all-time high. So if you're looking at your balance every day, it probably feels great for those 3 months, but then it drops by 5%, and so you're now below that all-time high.
And hangs around for 9 months.
Around there, and so you spend the whole time going, I want it to go back up. I want to go back up to that artificial high. So that I think is, to me, another interesting one is to think of that as there's nothing magic, and this is what you touched on. There's nothing magic about that price at which you retire. That's just a day. It's just a line it's a dot in the line of your life. There's nothing. We've talked about this before. The companies don't know how much you paid for them.
No.
They don't care. It doesn't matter. It's completely normal. It's 95% of your time will be spent slightly below the highest price that those companies have ever been worth. That's completely par for the course. There's nothing you need to do about this. I think the main takeaway for me is just for people to realise and know this leading up to that first year of retirement is this is an experience that you are going to go through. This is something that you may well feel and that you may well find yourself paying more attention to, and it's completely normal and there is nothing that you need to do about it.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 financial advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.